The studio lights dim as the familiar Dr. Phil-themed music fades into an unsettling silence. The audience sits rigid in their seats, sensing that today's episode will be different from anything they've witnessed before. Dr. Phil stands center stage, his expression grave, his usual confident demeanor replaced by something heavier weight that comes from knowing the story about to unfold will challenge everything his viewers believe about the sanctity of family. Today we're going to hear a story that will disturb you. Dr. Phil begins, his voice measured and serious. A story about two sisters, identical twins, who grew up in what appeared to be a normal suburban household in Portland, Oregon. But behind closed doors, their family practiced something that defies comprehension. Ritualistic ceremonies they called spiritual cleansing that destroyed these young women's childhoods and nearly cost one of them her life. The camera pans to two women sitting side by side on the stage. Madison and Morgan Fletcher, 28 years old, identical in appearance but vastly different in demeanor. Madison sits upright, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, her eyes scanning the studio as if searching for escape routes. Morgan, by contrast, leans slightly forward, a small USB drive clutched in her trembling fingers, her jaw set with determination despite the tears already forming in her eyes. For 20 years, Madison has lived with a secret so dark that she convinced herself it never happened. Dr. Phil continues, walking slowly toward the sisters. She buried the memories, built a new life, even changed her name and moved across the country. But 6 months ago, her twin sister Morgan found something, a video recording hidden in their deceased father's belongings that proves the nightmare was real. Madison's breathing becomes shallow as the camera focuses on her face. Her fingers dig into the armrest of her chair, knuckles white with tension. "I told myself I had imagined it all," she whispers, her voice barely audible through the microphone. "The therapist said it was false memory syndrome. My mother said I was mentally ill. For years, I believed I was crazy." Before we continue with this shocking revelation, don't forget to leave your like, subscribe to the channel, and activate the notification bell so you won't miss any of the next Dr. Phil revelations. Leave in the comments where you're watching from and what you think will happen in this case. Your opinion is very important for us to continue bringing this exclusive content that transforms lives. The story begins to unfold through Morgan's trembling voice as she explains how their childhood appeared normal to the outside world. Their father, Robert Fletcher, was a respected accountant in their Portland community. Their mother, Christine, volunteered at the local library and baked cookies for school fundraisers. On the surface, they were the picture-perfect American family to successful parents, twin daughters, a golden retriever named Max, and a house with a white picket fence. "We went to school like normal kids," Morgan says, her voice cracking with emotion. "We had birthday parties, playdates, everything looked completely normal during the day. But at night, starting when we were about 7 years old, things changed." Dr. Phil leans forward, his expression serious but compassionate. "What happened at night, Morgan?" Morgan glances at her sister, seeking silent permission to continue. Madison stares straight ahead, her face pale, but she gives an almost imperceptible nod. "Our father believed he had been chosen by what he called the Ancient Ones to perform purification rituals. He said our family had been selected for a sacred duty that went back generations. Every full moon, he would gather us in the basement." The audience releases a collective gasp. Several people shift uncomfortably in their seats. Dr. Phil raises his hand, asking for silence as Morgan continues. "The basement had been converted into what he called the sacred chamber," Morgan explains, her words coming faster now, as if she needs to expel them before she loses courage. "There were symbols painted on the walls, strange geometric patterns and characters that looked like ancient languages. He had an altar made of stone that he claimed had been passed down through our family for over 200 years. Phil turns his attention to Madison, who has been silent throughout her sister's account. "Madison, you've been sitting here listening to your sister describe these events. For 20 years, you've told yourself this never happened. What's going through your mind right now?" Madison's hands shake as she wipes tears from her cheeks. "I could see it all again," she whispers. "The candles, the smell of burning sage mixed with something else, something metallic and wrong." His voice chanting words I didn't understand. "And the animals." Her voice breaks completely, and she buries her face in her hands. Dr. Phil's expression hardens. "Animals? What animals?" "Madison." Morgan intervenes, her voice steady despite her tears. "He started with small animals, mice, birds. He said it was necessary for the cleansing process. He made us watch. He said if we looked away or closed our eyes, the rituals wouldn't work and terrible things would happen to our family. The camera captures the horror spreading across the audience's faces. Some people cover their mouths in shock. Doctor Phil stands, his posture rigid with controlled anger. How long did this continue? Until we were 16, Morgan replies. And then it got worse. Much worse. Dr. Phil walks to the edge of the stage, his voice dropping to a tone that his longtime viewers recognize the moment when he's about to uncover a truth that someone has been desperately trying to hide. Morgan, you mentioned that things got worse when you turned 16. I need you to tell us what happened, because what you described so far, while deeply disturbing and certainly constitutes child abuse, doesn't explain why you're here today with a video you claim shows a sacrifice ritual. What changed when you turned 16? Morgan's composure finally cracks. Tears stream down her face as she speaks. On our 16th birthday, our father said we were ready for the ultimate purification. He said that one of us had to prove our family's devotion to the Ancient Ones through a blood sacrifice. Not an animal this time. He said it had to be human. The studio erupts in shocked murmurs. Dr. Phil raises his hand for silence, his face grim. What are you telling me, Morgan? What happened? He made us draw straws. Madison suddenly speaks, her voice hollow and distant, as if she's recounting someone else's story. Short straw meant you would be the one. The sacrifice. He said the ritual required willing participation, that whoever drew the short straw had to accept their sacred duty. Morgan grips her sister's hand. Madison drew the short straw. The weight of this revelation settles over the studio like a physical presence. Dr. Phil sits down slowly, processing what he's just heard. Madison, you're sitting here today, which means something interrupted this plan. What happened? Madison's voice is barely a whisper. I tried to go through with it. I was so conditioned, so brainwashed by that point. I actually believed I was doing something holy. I remember standing at that stone altar while my father chanted. My mother was there too, holding a ceremonial knife that had been in our family for generations. I remember thinking that if I died, I would become immortal, that I would transcend this earthly plane. But you didn't die, Doctor. Phil states, his tone a mixture of relief and confusion. What stopped it? Morgan's voice breaks through, stronger now. I stopped it. In that moment, watching my father raise that knife, watching my sister close her eyes and accept what was about to happen, something broke inside me. All the conditioning, all the fear, all the manipulation just shattered. I screamed. I lunged at my father and knocked the knife from his hands. It clattered across the concrete floor, and for the first time in my life, I saw fear in his eyes. Fear of me. What happened next, Doctor? Phil asks. Chaos, Madison says, her voice gaining strength from her sister's courage. Morgan grabbed my hand and we ran. We ran out of that basement, out of that house, and we didn't stop running until we reached a neighbor's house 3 blocks away. We were barefoot, dressed in the white ceremonial robes he made us wear. We were covered in the blood of the animals he had sacrificed earlier in the ritual. We were hysterical, barely coherent. Doctor. Phil leans forward. Did the neighbor call the police? Morgan's expression darkens. They did. 2 officers came to the house, but by the time they arrived, our father had cleaned everything. The basement was spotless. Just a normal unfinished basement with concrete floors and storage boxes. The altar, the symbols, the ceremonial items, all of it vanished like it had never existed. And our mother, her voice fills with bitter anger. Our mother stood there and told the officers that we were troubled girls who had been making up stories for attention. She said we had behavioral problems, that we often had delusional episodes. And the police believed her, Doctor. Phil says, not as a question, but as a statement of fact. They did. Madison confirms. My father was a respected accountant. Our mother was a beloved community volunteer. We were just a hysterical teenage girls with no evidence to support our wild claims. The officers told us to stop making up stories and recommended we see a therapist for our attention-seeking behavior. Drive. Phil's jaw tightens. What happened after that night? We were separated, Morgan explains. Our parents convinced social services that we were feeding off each other's delusions, that being together made our supposed mental health issues worse. Madison was sent to live with our mother's sister in New Mexico. I was kept at home, but placed in intensive therapy chosen and monitored by our parents, of course. Madison picks up the narrative. I spent the next 2 years in therapy being told that my memories weren't real, that I had created an elaborate fantasy to cope with normal family dysfunction. By the time I turned 18, I had convinced myself it was all in my head. I changed my name, moved to Boston, and tried to build a normal life. I buried those memories so deep that most days I truly believed they were just nightmares, nothing more. And you, Morgan, doctor, Phil asks, you stayed in Portland with the same parents who had orchestrated this ritual abuse. Morgan nods slowly. I had nowhere else to go. But I was different after that night. I was no longer the compliant daughter. I fought them on everything. I locked my bedroom door at night. I refused to go into the basement for any reason. My father tried to reinitiate the ritual several times, but I threatened to go to the media, to tell everyone, even if no one believed me. Eventually, he stopped trying. We maintained this Cold War until I turned 18 and moved out. Doctor Phil stands, pacing the stage as he processes their story. So for 12 years, you'd have lived separate lives. Madison in Boston, you in Portland. Madison convinced herself it never happened, while you lived with the knowledge that it did. What changed? What brought you here today? Morgan's hand tightens around the USB drive. 6 months ago, our father died of a heart attack. I didn't go to the funeral. I wanted nothing to do with that man, even in death. But 3 months ago, I received a package from his attorney. My father had left specific instructions that this package was to be given to me, and only me, after his death. What was in the package, doctor? Phil asks, though the answer is already evident in Morgan's trembling hand. A safety deposit box key, Morgan says, and a note. The note said, you need to know the truth. You need to show Madison the truth. What we did was real. I went to the bank, opened the safety deposit box, and inside was this. She holds up the USB drive, a video recording of our 16th birthday. The ritual, all of it. The studio has fallen into an eerie silence. Even the camera operators seem frozen in place, unsure of what they're about to witness. Doctor Phil looks at the USB drive in Morgan's hand with an expression that viewers of his show have rarely seen: genuine apprehension. Morgan, before you show us what's on that drive, I need to understand something, doctor. Phil says carefully, you said your father left this for you with specific instructions that you show it to Madison. Why? Why would he want this documented? Why would he want you to have proof after all these years of denying it happened? Morgan's voice trembles as she answers. The note also said, the work must continue. The bloodline cannot be broken. Madison must understand her purpose. Doctor Phil, I think my father believed that even after his death, Madison could be brought back into whatever this was. I think he thought that seeing the video would somehow reactivate her conditioning, make her remember not with horror, but with that twisted sense of sacred duty he had drilled into us. Madison's breathing becomes rapid and shallow. I don't want to see it, she says suddenly, panic rising in her voice. I can't see it. If it's real, if what I remember actually happened, I don't know how I'm supposed to live with that. How do I reconcile being a normal person with being someone who once stood on an altar, willingly waiting to be sacrificed? Phil moves closer to the sisters, his voice gentle but firm. Madison, you were a child. You were manipulated and abused by the two people who were supposed to protect you. Whatever happened in that basement was not your fault. You were a victim, not a willing participant. Do you understand that? Madison nods, tears streaming down her face, but her expression remains unconvinced. Morgan wraps her arms around her sister, and for a moment, the cameras capture the twins as they must have been as children to small girls clinging to each other in the face of unimaginable horror. Phil turns to his production team. I want to see this video before we show anything to the audience. I need to know what we're dealing with here. A monitor is wheeled onto the stage, positioned so that only Dr. Phil can see the screen initially. Morgan inserts the USB drive with shaking hands. The studio is so quiet that the software of the computer reading the drive seems deafening. The video begins to play. From the audience's perspective, they can only see Dr. Phil's face as he watches. His expression starts with professional detachment. He's seen many disturbing things in his career. But as seconds turn into minutes, his face transforms. The color drains from his cheeks. His jaw clenches. His hands grip the edge of his chair until his knuckles turn white. Suddenly, Dr. Phil stands abruptly and walks away from the monitor, his hand covering his mouth. The cameras follow him as he turns his back to the stage, composing himself. The audience has never seen him like this. In over 20 years of hosting one of the most dramatic shows on television, Dr. Phil has maintained his composure through thousands of shocking revelations. But not today. Stop the recording, Dr. Phil says, his voice rough. Stop the cameras. Clear the studio. There's confusion among the production team. The executive producer's voice can be heard off camera. Dr. Phil, we're in the middle of a taping. I said clear the studio. Now. Dr. Phil's voice leaves no room for argument. Get everyone out except essential personnel. This is not for public viewing. This is evidence of a serious crime. The cameras continue rolling, but the audience is escorted out of the studio. Only the core production team remains: camera operators, sound technicians, the director. The atmosphere has shifted from a television taping to something far more serious. Dr. Phil speaks quietly with someone off camera, presumably making a phone call. When he returns to the sisters, his demeanor has completely changed. He's no longer a television host. He's become something closer to an investigator or counselor dealing with a critical situation. Madison, Morgan, I need you to listen to me very carefully, Dr. Phil says, sitting down between them, his voice low and intense. What's on that video is not just evidence of what happened to you 16 years ago. It's evidence of something much bigger, something that may still be active. Madison's eyes widen. What do you mean, still active, Dr. Phil takes a deep breath before continuing. The video your father recorded doesn't just show the two of you and your parents. There are other people there. At least 8 other adults, all wearing ceremonial robes, all participating in the ritual. And he pauses, clearly struggling with what he's about to say. There are other children visible in the background. Young children. This wasn't just about your family, was it, Morgan? Morgan's face crumbles. I didn't see that part. I couldn't watch the whole thing. I saw enough to confirm our memories were real. Then I stopped the video. I couldn't bear to see more. There's something else, Dr. Phil continues, his expression grave. One of the adults in that video, one of the people standing in that basement participating in this ritual, I recognized his face. He's a local Portland councilman. He's been in public office for the past 12 years. The implications of this revelation hang in the air like a toxic cloud. Madison begins to hyperventilate, and Morgan grabs her sister's hand. Both of them trying to process what they're hearing. You're saying this wasn't just our family. Madison whispers. You're saying this was an organized group. I'm saying that what your father documented was evidence of a cult that may extend well beyond your immediate family, Dr. Phil confirms. And the fact that he left this video for you. With that note about the work must continue and the bloodline cannot be broken, I think he believed you would eventually come back to it, that you would continue whatever this group was doing. Morgan's voice rises with anger. We would never. I know you wouldn't, Dr. Phil interrupts gently. But your father didn't know that. He spent years controlling you through fear and manipulation. He couldn't conceive of the possibility that you had genuinely broken free from his influence. That's why he left this video. He thought it would be a tool to bring you back into the fold. What do we do? Madison asks, her voice small and frightened. If there are other people, if this is still happening somewhere, what do we do? Dr. Phil's expression becomes resolute. We go to the authorities. Not the local police in Portland, we go to the FBI. Human trafficking, child abuse, conspiracy to commit murder, these are federal crimes. And with this video as evidence, along with your testimony, there's finally a chance to hold these people accountable. But it's been 16 years, Morgan protests. The statute of limitations doesn't apply to attempted murder, Dr. Phil states firmly. And if there are other children involved, if this cult is still active, then ongoing crimes are being committed right now. This video is the smoking gun that law enforcement has needed to investigate this properly. Madison looks at her sister, then at Drive-Off Phil. For 20 years, I've been told I was crazy. My own therapists, my own family, everyone said my memories were false. And now you're telling me it was not only real, but it was even worse than I remembered. I'm telling you that you survived something horrific, and now you have the power to make sure no other child has to endure what you endured, Dr. Phil responds. Your father thought this video would control you. Instead, it's going to be the instrument of justice. Morgan straightens her spine, a new determination evident in her posture. When do we start? We start now, Dr. Phil says. I have someone from the FBI's Crimes Against Children unit on the phone. They're willing to take your statements and review this evidence immediately. But I need you both to understand once we start this process, your lives are going to change again. This will be investigated. You'll have to testify. Your past will be examined in ways that may be painful and invasive. Are you prepared for that? The twins look at each other, a silent communication passing between them that only people who shared a womb could understand. Then, simultaneously, they both nod. We're ready, Madison says, her voice stronger than it's been throughout the entire taping. For the first time in my life, I'm ready to stop running from the truth. Weeks later, the cameras return to capture the aftermath of that unprecedented taping. Dr. Phil stands alone on his stage, addressing his audience directly, his tone serious and measured. What you're about to hear is the conclusion to one of the most disturbing cases the show has ever encountered. Due to the ongoing federal investigation, we cannot show you the video that was presented during that taping. But I can tell you what happened in the weeks that followed. The screen behind him displays photos of Madison and Morgan, smiling now, looking healthier and more at peace than they had appeared in the studio that day. The FBI took Madison and Morgan's testimony and the video evidence seriously within 48 hours of our taping. They had launched a full investigation into what they're calling a multi-generational cult operating in the Pacific Northwest. 6 individuals have been arrested so far, including the Portland councilman I recognized in the video. Child Protective Services have removed 4 children from homes connected to this group, and those children are now in safe foster care receiving the psychological help they desperately need. Dr. Phil pauses, his expression a mixture of satisfaction and profound sadness. Madison and Morgan Fletcher spent 16 years, more than half their lives carrying the weight of trauma that most people cannot even imagine. Madison was convinced she was mentally ill, that her memories were delusions. Morgan lived with the knowledge of what happened, but without any way to prove it, or get justice for it. Their own mother, who participated in these rituals, still denies everything and is currently facing multiple criminal charges. He walks to the front of the stage, looking directly into the camera. I've been doing this show for over 20 years. I've seen families in crisis. I've seen addiction, abuse, betrayal, and dysfunction in countless forms. But I've never seen anything quite like what was on that video. And I want to talk to you, the viewer at home, about why I stopped that taping. Some of you might think that as a television show, our job is to show you everything, to give you the most dramatic content possible. But there's a line between entertainment and exploitation, between revealing truth and causing further harm. What was on that video was evidence of crimes against children. Showing it to an audience for entertainment purposes would have been unconscionable. It would have violated every ethical principle I claim to stand for. Dr. Phil's voice becomes more intense, more passionate. But there's another reason I stopped that taping. In that moment, watching that video, I realized that Madison and Morgan weren't just guests sharing a story. They were survivors presenting evidence that could save other children. This wasn't about ratings or viral moments or shocking revelations. This was about justice. He gestures to the now empty chairs where the sisters had sat. Madison spent 20 years believing she was broken, believing her own mind had betrayed her. She built a life trying to be normal, trying to forget, trying to convince herself that the worst thing that ever happened to her was just a nightmare. But trauma doesn't work that way. You can't heal from something by pretending it never happened. You can only heal by facing it, acknowledging it, and working through it. And Morgan carried the burden of knowing what happened. While watching her sister suffer with false memories and self-doubt, she knew the truth but had no way to prove it until their father, even in death, provided the very evidence he thought would perpetuate his control, but instead became the instrument of liberation. Dr. Phil's expression softened slightly. Here's what I want you to understand. If you're watching this and you've experienced trauma, if you have memories that people tell you aren't real, if you've been made to feel crazy for remembering what happened to you, you are not alone. Madison and Morgan's story is extreme, but the invalidation of trauma is not uncommon. Too many survivors are told they're exaggerating, misremembering, or fabricating their experiences. Trust yourself. Trust your memories. And if people in positions of authority, therapists, family members, even police officers dismiss your truth, keep looking until you find someone who will listen. Madison and Morgan spent 16 years being told they were wrong about their own experiences. They weren't. And if you're in a similar situation, chances are you're not wrong either. He pauses, letting that message sink in before continuing. The FBI has asked me to share some information with the public. If you or someone you know has had any connection to unusual religious or spiritual groups in the Portland, Oregon area between 1985 and the present, particularly groups that practice secretive rituals or showed unusual interest in children, please contact the FBI's tip line. The investigation is ongoing, and authorities believe there may be more victims who haven't come forward yet. Phil walks back to center stage, his hands clasped in front of him. Madison and Morgan are now working with trauma specialists who understand ritual abuse and cult psychology. They're beginning the long process of healing, real healing, not the kind that comes from denial and suppression, but the kind that comes from acknowledgement and processing. They've also become advocates for other survivors of ritual abuse, speaking with advocacy groups and helping to educate mental health professionals about the reality of these experiences. Their mother is awaiting trial and maintaining her innocence. The other arrested individuals have all pleaded not guilty. The legal process will be long and difficult, but for the first time, Madison and Morgan have something they never had before: validation. Their truth has been acknowledged, their trauma has been recognized, and the people who hurt them are finally being held accountable. Dr. Phil's voice becomes firm, taking on the authoritative tone his viewers know well. Now, I want to address the question some of you are probably asking. Why did I walk away from that video? Why did I abandon the stage in the middle of a taping? Because some things are more important than television. Some things are more important than ratings or entertainment value. When you're confronted with evidence of serious ongoing crimes, when you have the power to potentially save children from harm, you don't think about the show. You think about doing the right thing. I've built my career on being direct, on not pulling punches, on showing people hard truths even when those truths are uncomfortable. But there's a difference between discomfort and trauma. There's a difference between showing someone their behavior is destructive and exposing them to material that could re-traumatize them or compromise a criminal investigation. In that moment, I had to make a choice: be a television host or be a human being who just witnessed evidence of horrific crimes. I chose to be human first. He looks directly into the camera, his expression intense and sincere. If you take nothing else from this episode, take this: your family is supposed to protect you. Your parents are supposed to keep you safe. When that fundamental trust is violated, when the people who should love you most are the ones who hurt you most, it creates a wound that runs deeper than almost any other trauma. Madison and Morgan survived not just physical danger, but the betrayal of the people who were supposed to cherish them. But here's the other part of their story: they survived. They endured 16 years of doubt, isolation, and pain, but they survived. And now they're using their survival to help others. That's resilience. That's courage. That's proof that even the deepest wounds can eventually become sources of strength. Dr. Phil's voice softens for his final message. To Madison and Morgan, if you're watching this, thank you for your courage. Thank you for trusting this show with your story. Thank you for being willing to relive your trauma so that other children might be protected. You didn't just save yourself 16 years ago when you ran from that basement. You're saving others now by speaking up. That's heroism in its purest form. And to everyone watching, believe survivors. Listen to children. Question authority when that authority demands blind obedience. Pay attention to the warning signs. And remember that the most dangerous predators are often the ones who look the most normal, the most respected, the most trustworthy. He pauses one final time, his expression grave but determined. This is why I stopped the filming that day. This is why I cleared the studio. Because some battles are more important than entertainment. Some truths require action, not just acknowledgement. And some moments in life remind us that we're not just television hosts or producers or viewers. We're human beings with the power and responsibility to protect the vulnerable and pursue justice. That's our show for today. If you or someone you know needs help, please reach out. The resources are available. The help is real. And your truth matters. The camera slowly fades as Dr. Phil stands alone on the stage, a man who built his career on dramatic television moments, but who, in the most important moment, chose humanity over ratings. In stopping that filming, in abandoning that stage, he made a statement more powerful than any monologue. Some things are too important to be reduced to entertainment. Some truths demand more than our attention, they demand our action.